My grandmother died on a Tuesday, at 4:14 in the afternoon, with my hand in hers. The phone company had closed her landline that same morning. A stranger at a desk somewhere shut the account off hours before her heart did. So there is no version of the world where the call I got the next day should have been possible. At 4:14 the following afternoon, to the minute, my phone lit up with her name and her old number, the dead one, and a voice I had known my whole life said the 4 words she'd been saying to me since I was a child. Read the last page. My grandmother took me in when I was 9, the year my mother decided she was better at leaving than staying. She was not a soft woman. She was the other kind, the kind who teaches you to check the oil, count your change, and never let a man be the only name on anything that matters. She had one rule she repeated so often it stopped sounding like words. Before you sign a thing, before you trust a thing, read the last page first. The nice part's always up front, baby, she'd say. They hide the truth on the last page, where they hope you're too tired to look. I heard it at 16 over a phone contract. I heard it at 24 over a lease. I heard it at 31, the week before my wedding, when she held my face in both hands and said it again, slower, looking at me like she was trying to hand me something through my eyes. I married him anyway. She came to the wedding. She wore the blue she always wore, and she smiled for the pictures, and on her way out she squeezed my arm and said nothing at all, which from her was a whole paragraph. For 9 years I thought she'd just never warmed to him. It turned out she'd read his last page before I ever got to his first. The last months were slow, and then very fast. I was the one who sat with her. Not my husband, he had work, he always had work lately, late and vague and coming home smelling faintly of a perfume I had decided not to think about. She stopped speaking on the Sunday. Tuesday afternoon her breathing changed, the way the nurses had warned me it would, and at 4:14 it simply stopped, quietly, the way she did everything. I stayed until they came for her. I drove home. The next morning, in that flat administrative fog that grief hands you so you have something to do with your hands, I called the phone company myself and had her landline shut off. It was one small thing I could finish. The woman on the line read me a confirmation number. The account was closed at 9:40, Wednesday morning. I want you to hold on to that. The line was dead by breakfast. Whatever called me that afternoon was calling from a number that no longer connected to anything on this earth. I was standing in my kitchen with a casserole somebody had left, not eating it, when the phone rang. Her name. Her photo, the one where she's laughing at something off to the side. Her old number underneath. I answered because your hand answers before your head can stop it. I said, hello, and then I said the stupid, tender thing you say. I said her name like a question, like she might answer. There was static, like wind moving down a long hallway. Something underneath it that might have been breathing and might have been the sea. And then, clear, close, right in the middle of my ear, her voice, tired and certain, the way it always was. Read the last page. Then nothing. Not even a click. Just the nothing of a call that was never really open. My screen said it had lasted 6 seconds. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped the phone into the sink. I am not a woman who believes in signs. Let me be honest about that, because it matters to the rest of this. So I did what a reasonable person does. I built explanations, one after another, and stacked them like sandbags. It was a spoof call. Scammers can fake any number, everyone knows that. It was a dream I'd half woken from. It was grief, which I'd read somewhere can do this, can dress itself up in a voice you miss and knock on the inside of your skull. I told myself all of it. I almost believed it. I even laughed once, alone in that kitchen, at how badly I must want her back, if my own mind would counterfeit her just to buy me 6 more seconds. But a warning has one quality that comfort doesn't. You can decide it wasn't real. You cannot decide it wasn't specific. Because read the last page is not a thing grief says. Grief says I love you. Grief says I'm not in pain anymore. Grief does not send you on an errand. And I knew. I had known for 4 days and been too worn down to look exactly which papers had a last page. They'd been sitting on the hall table for a week. My husband had brought them home the day after she went into hospice, in a stiff envelope, and set them beside my keys where I'd have to see them. Estate stuff, he'd said. For the house. I had a guy draw it up so it's simple for you. Just sign the flagged pages, honey, you don't need to wade through the rest. He'd even bought the little arrow tabs. Sign here. Sign here. He'd been so gentle about it. He knew I was drowning, and he had handed me a pen shaped like a life raft. My grandmother left me her house. Only me. She'd made a point of it years before, in front of a lawyer, in front of my husband. The house is hers, she'd said. Just hers. He'd smiled then, too. So that Wednesday night I sat down on the floor of the hall, and I did not sign the flagged pages. I turned to the back. It was a quitclaim deed. Signing it would have moved my grandmother's house into both our names, and stapled behind it, a second document giving him the sole authority to sell. The flagged pages up front were all soft language. Grief language. Surviving spouse. To simplify things for you. The truth was in the back, where he'd bet I was too broken to look. Where they always keep it. Once you pull one loose thread, the whole thing wants to come apart in your hands. I stopped being tired. Grief has an off switch, and it is called self-preservation. I went through the envelope, then the drawer, then the account I'd let him manage because managing it made him feel like the man of something. There was a savings account I wasn't on. There were transfers out of our joint account, small enough to miss one at a time, steady enough to matter, going back 11 months. And there was a lease. A lease, on an apartment across town, signed in the spring, with a second name printed under his. Her name. The perfume had a name now. He hadn't been planning to leave me. That's the part that still turns my stomach. He'd been planning to have me sign my grandmother's house into his hands, sell it, and leave me with the mortgage on the one we shared, while he started over with her, funded, quite literally, by the woman who raised me and never trusted him for a single day. Living, she had read his last page. And dead, or in a dream, or in the wiring of my own frightened mind, something knew it still, and knew I had maybe 4 days before a pen finished what he'd started. This is where people expect the screaming. There wasn't any. I've come to think rage is only loud when it's helpless. Mine had somewhere to go, so it went quiet and got organized instead. I did not confront him. I want to say that plainly, because it's the whole difference. A confrontation is a warning, and he had already taught me exactly what a warning is worth to a man who is planning around you. Thursday I photographed every page, the deed, the transfers, the lease, her name, all of it, and mailed the images to an account only I can open. Friday I sat across a desk from a lawyer, a calm woman who read the last page of everything without being told to, and who said the sentence I'll keep for the rest of my life. You found this in time, she said. Most women find it the day after. I moved my grandmother's savings, the money she'd left me, the money he was quietly counting on, into an account with only my name on it. The way she taught me at 9. The way she begged me to at 31. Then I put the unsigned papers back on the hall table, arrow tabs and all, exactly as he'd left them. For 3 more days I made his coffee. I've thought about that a great deal. I don't think it was cruelty. I think it was the strange calm of a woman who has already left, standing politely in the doorway of a life she is done with, waiting for the paperwork to catch up to her. On the Monday, my lawyer filed. He was served at the office, in the middle of the work he was always doing. He came home that night the color of ash and found me at the kitchen table with the envelope open to the last page, and the pen he'd bought me sitting on top of it, uncapped and unused. He led with the soft language. The front page language. That it wasn't what it looked like. That the deed was only ever meant to protect me. That she, the lease, the name, was nothing, was over, was a mistake he'd already been ending. I slid the last page across the table and asked him to read it out loud. He couldn't. Or he wouldn't. He just kept saying my name like it was an argument. And I noticed that I felt almost nothing, no heat, no triumph. Only the tired certainty of a woman who has finally read something all the way to the end and knows there is no line left in it worth staying for. I told him the house was mine, that it had always been only mine, and that he had until the weekend to be gone. Then I did the one thing she'd raised me to do. I picked up the pen he'd bought to sign my life away, and I signed my own name, once, on my lawyer's papers instead. People always ask me the same thing. They lean in, and they lower their voice, and they ask if it was really her. I don't know. I'll be honest with you, the way she was always honest with me. The entry is still in my call log, her name, her dead number, 6 seconds, that Wednesday at 4:14. I showed it to the phone company. A polite man told me the line had been disconnected since 9:40 that morning, and that what I was describing was, in his words, not possible on their end. Maybe it was a stranger with a spoofed number and a cruel sense of timing. Maybe grief simply wore her voice because I needed her one more time, and my own mind was merciful about it. Maybe the dead get one call, and she spent hers the way she spent her whole life, not saying she loved me, but making sure I would be alright. I've stopped needing to know. The not knowing is the only part that doesn't matter. Because whether it was my grandmother or my grief, it knew his handwriting before I did, and it reached me before the pen did. A warning you listen to doesn't have to be real. It only has to be right. I live in her house now. The blue she always wore is the color of the door. And every so often, before I sign anything at all, I still turn to the back and read the last page first. Because the nice part is always up front, baby, and the truth waits where they hope you're too tired to look. If a voice you loved ever warned you about something you couldn't explain, and you listened, and it saved you, tell me below. I read every one. I've stopped asking whether they were real. I only ask whether they were right.